What's the worst thing about sports? That's right, all those unnecessary breaks in play, but you can make them all better by using Grubhub. Grubhub has every food you can possibly crave, from national favorites to local spots. Grab your first order from the Grubhub app or visit Grubhub.com. That's Grubhub.com. And now Amazon Prime members get a year of Grubhub Plus for free. That's 0 food delivery fees from your favorite restaurants. Visit goforgrubhub.com/Amazon for terms and details. Go for Grubhub.
The always ready for breakfast deal.
Going to bed already?
Yep. Breakfast at Mickey D's tomorrow.
So?
Sooner I go to bed, sooner it'll be morning. Sooner I'll be at Mickey D's.
This is actually brilliant.
You can come too. Turn out that light.
There's a deal for every breakfast strategist at McDonald's.
Start your morning with a $3 bagel breakfast sandwich, available only in the app. Offer valid 1/2 through 1/15/23 at participating U.S. McDonald's. Valid one time per day. McD app download and registration required.
You're listening to 100 Words or Less with Ray Harkins. Welcome to this podcast about independent music of the punk, hardcore, metal, emo, indie rock, whatever you want to call it, as long as it's of the DIY variety. We are here with a special guest. I mean, because, everyone is special, but people that come on this podcast are even more special to me, and I hope they're special to you. Brett Boland, who is the vocalist from and guitar player, I make sure I could have mentioned that he plays guitar because he is a shredder. He plays in a band called Astronoid, and his name is Brett Boland. I love this band so much. They're coming out with a new record called Radiant Bloom that is out June 3rd. So please pay attention to that. They've released a few singles. And I will play, obviously, a little bit of that as we go into the interview. But Astronoid, great band. Just has a lot of, so many things going on. Progressive metal, Muse, Mew, so many things put into a band. And I fell in love with them many years ago. I had Casey Allward, who is the guitarist of the band, on the show. I can't even remember when, but it was probably forever ago. And I just love what they do. And once the opportunity came to speak to Brett specifically, I was like, let's do this. Let's learn more about the man behind Astronaut, as it were. You can do me a favor. Please spread the word of this podcast. That is the best way to help support the show, because I do get emails from you kind people, 100wordspodcast@gmail.com, that ask, hey, can I donate something? And it's like, no, don't even worry about that. Just tell your friends, tell your family, maybe if your family's into music. But I just would appreciate you spreading that word. You can also leave a review on Apple Podcasts, whether it's a written word or, a 5-star review, whatever you're feeling on that particular platform. Spotify, you can do the same thing, except no written reviews, just stars. All of those things I greatly appreciate. And ultimately, we are in a world that gun violence is such a huge problem. And I encourage you to not only have an opinion about it, but then draw a hard line in the sand, whether you support or are against gun control. Now, to be abundantly clear, I do not condone any violence in any capacity, and the ownership of guns and all of that. I mean, it's a soul-crushing thing to watch time and time again, of all of the mass shootings and all of the things that happen upon our particular country, because let's be honest, it does not happen in very many other countries. Yes, of course, there's outbursts of violence here or there, but when you're talking about schools getting shot up, it just it breaks my heart, and it is lying heavy on me right now because I literally just read the news about a couple hours ago in regards to the school shooting in Texas, and I can't stand it. It's awful. So you need to have an opinion. You need to vote for politicians that actually stick by their words, and that's obviously a difficult thing to sometimes come by, but make your opinion known, and let's see if we can't obviously correct this problem sooner rather than later. No one needs to die at the senseless violence that exists in these mass shootings. It's awful. So my condolences to everybody who's experiencing pain around this, and also is experiencing just the heart-wrenching news, even from a person who is not connected to this in any way, shape, or form. So anyways, I'll get off my soapbox, but let's talk to Brett from Astronoid. Like I said, they have a new record coming out June 3rd. Stream all of their stuff everywhere possible. So here we go. Here is Brett.
And like I was mentioning prior to recording, that I met Casey, who is your bandmate, and plays in Vatnet. Viscar, right? Am I butchering that?
Yeah. No.
Okay.
No, you're not butchering.
Good. And he just like casually, because I'm totally probably misremembering the years, but it was probably around like 2015, 2016. And then he sent me Astronoid, and I was like, oh my gosh, like this is a very well thought out thing. Like it just felt so lived in, even though it was, some of your earlier stuff. And then shortly after that, I know your manager, or I don't know if you're still working with him, but Wayne Pagini, I'm very good friends with. And it was one of those things that it felt so confident for being a quote unquote / new young band. And I'm sure for you at this juncture in the band's career to like look back on this thing and be like, wow, this is like 10 years old. I realize I'm like throwing a lot at you, but do you kind of like look at the overarching kind of musical output and like see the progression where you like look back on the earlier recordings that are just like, oh man, that's like, kid stuff to what we are doing now? Or how does that kind of sit in your head?
I was actually listening to it today. My daughter, so I had a daughter last year.
Congrats.
And thank you. Yeah. And I'm just playing her Astronoid, so I put on the new single and I let Spotify just kind of go, and it was going through like Resin and all these old songs. And it just seems like a time and a place thing. And like, it is what it is. And it wouldn't have happened any other way. Like, I don't really see it. I see ourselves like getting more focused as we go, but it's just sort of like growth. And I don't look back on a lot of things and I'm like, oh, I wish I didn't do that, or I wish we didn't do that song. It's just like, it was perfect for what we were doing at that time. And it's cool going back and listening to some of this stuff, because a lot of it's cool, especially some of the stuff on air where we were flying by the seat of our pants. Like, we were writing and recording the album at the same time. It was bonkers. It was a nightmare. And so just listening to how it came out and just knowing the story in my head of like how that song came together is fun to think about, and how much more focused it's become and how much easier it's become since, in certain ways. It's more difficult in others, but it's fun looking back and listening to it.
Yeah, it's cool. The reason I find it, I guess, fun to look at it through that prism is, usually when you're putting out, and I know Astronoid isn't your first band, but like when you're putting out your first material, it's totally, the weight of expectation is not on anything. You're just like, whatever, like, here it is. Like, yes, of course I'm putting thought and some effort or whatever, but it usually doesn't feel, and I know this sounds so esoteric, but like lived in, or like confident. And I think that's what initially gravitated me towards that. Your music is like, it felt lived in, and it doesn't even have to be from like maybe a technical perspective, but it just felt there in a positive way. Like, does that, I guess, like the idea. Yeah.
Like I kind of understood what I was doing, even though I had no idea.
Sure.
Yeah. What's so funny about the band is it's just like, I don't know if I'm a confident person. Like I in ways I am, but in music I feel like I'm a confident person. Like if I'm putting something out there, like I'm going to put my everything into it. And when we were working on that Astronoid stuff, like the air stuff rather, it was just like, this is what we're doing. And like I remember screaming on Stargazer, like just in the background. I was like, fuck this, I'm never doing this again. And then I decided rather, I was like, I'm never screaming again. And we're never having screaming in our music, because I would do the screaming for the song Astronoid live when Nick wasn't there to do it from Vatnet. And I hated it. I was like, I'm never screaming again. I hate doing this. And it's done. And like, it was the most like black and white thing, basically the only black and white thing in the band, that we decided like, we're not doing this. And then we just embraced that energy and I guess beauty of whatever we were doing, and just took it. Like my love of Mew and my love of like, I guess, black metal and stuff, and some shoegaze. But like in the early Astronoid stuff, like Stargazer and the November EP, like I didn't know shoegaze. Like I didn't listen to it. I didn't know any bands. Someone actually was like, "You sound like My Bloody Valentine." I was like, "Who the hell is that?"
Right.
So it was like, it was a real profound moment to me of being like, there's music like this, because I just heard Alcest and he was ripping off Slow Dive and My Bloody Valentine. So I got it secondhand, and then finding those early bands, I was just like, holy shit. So we did the Only Shallow cover. So that was the whole like gateway into all this. And then we started working on Air, and then it sort of came together.
Right. Well, just just that idea, not to interrupt your train of thought, but like the statement that leaps out at me is just, you don't know what you don't know.
No.
Like that. That was exactly it, where it's like, everybody is standing on the shoulders of giants, but you don't know where that stuff is coming from if you are only looking at it through that particular prism, which, like you said, listening to Alcest, you're just like, oh my gosh, like they're so incredible. And of course you can listen to them and hear nods once they, you read an interview or whatever. But yeah, if you don't know, you're just kind of being like, I just want to like kind of rip this off.
Yeah, I was ripping him off.
Totally.
And like Yesu and Agalok and all that stuff. And like there's hints of Emperor and Izan's stuff in there too. But I didn't know. It was all black metal stuff I was ripping from. And then all the vocal stuff was Mew. Like, and I think that's pretty obvious.
Yeah, totally.
So that was sort of like, I don't know why it makes sense to me, but it did. And it still does. And at the same time, it makes no sense at all. Picking dream pop and mixing it with this black metal stuff. And I don't know what it is now.
Yeah. Oh, for sure. Now it's just the evolution through the, the meat grinder.
Now, yeah. It's my brain's meat grinder.
Right. For sure. And we'll pick on some of that a little bit later, but focusing on you as a person, were you actually born and raised in the Massachusetts area, or did you come up somewhere else?
Yeah, it was Massachusetts. It's like the North Shore area.
Got it.
What is it? Merrimack Valley.
Okay, got it. Yeah, and that Merrimack Valley was, is a very fertile ground. I mean, whatever, Cave In, Converge, all of that Boston, generalized Massachusetts hardcore has definitely come up.
Yeah, we had everybody on Earth. Shadows Fall, like you said, Cave In, Converge. Like the metal community when I was growing up was enormous. And the Worcester thing was going on too, with Bury Your Dead and Acacia Strain and like all that shit.
Yeah, for sure. And it was always interesting to living on the West Coast that I do, it was always interesting to see the bands kind of percolate from these specific areas. Obviously, this is kind of like pre-internet and the regionalization was more important, but you were able to see these scenes pop up and be like, why is this all happening in this area? It's like, well, it's just because everybody is kind of playing shows with each other and then just like ripping each other off in a good way.
Exactly. Yep.
Yeah. And so as you were kind of growing up, what was your family structure like? Do you have brothers and sisters, mom and dad in the house? What did that look like?
Yeah, so it was my mom and dad and sister. She's 3 years younger than me. And it was like, we lived in a middle class area in Groveland. And I went to school with Casey. Like, we've known each other since fourth grade. And we've been friends since sixth. We hated each other for a few years, but we're stupid kids.
Right.
He was he was really cool. Oh,
okay.
He was just really cool. Like, he was doing like backflips with all the girls doing jump rope, and I was just like in band,
Totally.
And then we had a mutual friend, and he forced us to hang out, and then we did a battle of we did this like talent showy thing, where I played drums, and Casey and the other kid Brendan, it was like lip synced guitar to it. I don't know, it was stupid, but anyways, that's when we became friends.
Dude, that's incredible. I always love that idea where people that, play music or are interested in different things, but travel in different lanes and then get thrown together by circumstance. And it's just
exactly what happened. Our love of music kind of converged us. And then we made our first band with the three of us. And then Brendan was he was the original drummer in Astronoid too, but it just didn't work out.
Got it.
He's a great dude, but things happen.
They do. What kind of kid did you find yourself being and gravitating towards? I know, like you were saying that you were, in band and stuff like that. Did you care about school? Were you an indoor kid? What was the vibe?
I was absolutely an indoor kid. I loved music and video games, and basically music ruled my life. I did play sports. I played hockey and I played baseball. But it was mainly hockey. I played hockey until junior year of high school.
Oh, okay.
And then I was forced to make a choice. I'll go back to that in a minute.
Please.
But I guess I could go to that now.
Let's transition. Right. Exactly.
So
hockey. Why did you give up?
Why'd you give up hockey?
Yeah.
I was always into music. My parents would yell at me because I would get a whole pile of CDs together for going to the doctor 5 minutes down the street. I needed every CD with me at that time because I didn't know what I wanted to listen to in the back of the van. And I had, I played drums. Drums is my first instrument, and I studied that through college. And then I taught myself around the same time to play guitar. So fourth grade, I started drums, and then sixth grade, I started to teach myself how to play guitar. And I've never been formally trained in guitar, but a lot of stuff that I learned, I took from the drum, years of drum lessons and musical theory crap I took in college. Not crap, because it's useful, but you know what I mean.
Yeah,
so
totally.
When I got up to that high school level, I started getting. So I was playing hockey, and I was playing in percussion ensemble and jazz combo and all this other stuff. And I had to be in band to be in those other two. I hated band, hated it. I hated marching band. I hated the orchestral stuff. I just wanted to play the jazz stuff, and I wanted to do percussion ensemble. So I was being punished by getting to hockey practice late after coming from percussion ensemble. So I would be doing laps for being late from coming from another school activity. So my dad approached me, and he plays hockey. He played hockey his whole life, and he sports are his thing. He's always loved music, and he's always surrounded me in music, and a lot of my tastes come from him. But he loves playing goalie in hockey. So, and he approached me with this choice of you need to choose music or hockey. It's they're both suffering right now, and you need to focus on one of them. And, this is a formative time. I'm still a little moron, but it's, it's junior year of high school,
Right.
So I chose music, and then I focused on music, and then that was it. It was since then my focus in life has been my craft of music. And, they allowed me to go to UMass Lowell, and I went to the sound recording program there, and I studied. You have to play an instrument to go there, as well as do all your mathematics and all that stuff. So I just did that through college, and I'm still doing it now.
Right. I mean, I appreciate the, unraveling of the story like that, because I do think that people really get to that point where it's like whether it's like choosing between, this sport and, this extracurricular activity, like it does get to that point where you have to make that decision, and not like that decision will be reverberated throughout your life in regards to like,
knew? Too,
right. Like, totally.
Maybe my dad must have had the foresight, because I was too stupid to know at that time. I was like, drums, but it was hard. It was tough for me because I didn't want to like let my dad down, so like I had to think about it, because he's like so into sports and hockey and all this stuff, and like I didn't want to be like, I don't want to do this anymore,
Right.
So it was a tough decision, but I'm glad I did it, and I'm glad he didn't pressure me into doing something I didn't want to do,
Sure.
I am so thrilled to tell you about Rockabilia.com. That is because they are the best purveyors of merchandise on the internet that you could possibly wrap your head around. What makes them great? Well, first of all, it's all officially licensed stuff. So that means you get high quality stuff. Bands get paid for you purchasing that, and you are supporting an independent business. This is all a virtuous cycle that happens, and I could not be more grateful to that company for being a small cog in this. Use this code, 100 words or less, that gets you 10% off of your entire order. So please check it out. There's so many items, 500,000 items. You cannot possibly find something there that they don't have. Maybe that's a challenge, like go ahead, try to find something, and then you'll find it and you'll be like, damn, you were right, Ray. But all hyperbole aside, it is a great business, independently owned. They support the bands of all shapes and sizes, and I don't care what genre of music you like, there will be something that you can find and purchase and enjoy. So again, 100 words or less, promo code will give you 10% off, and then plus it helps them know that marketing works. So thank you very much, Rockabilia.
This show is sponsored by BetterHelp. We've all been there. Life's going good, relationships are awesome, work's great, family life's great, and then all of a sudden, some things start to happen. A wheel falls off. You maybe have some issues at work, and then all of a sudden you're in a spot where you feel bogged down and you might not know who to turn to. You're like, I don't want to bug my family or friends with this stuff. That is why I wholeheartedly endorse therapy. I've used it myself, and I think it is an incredible tool. That is why I love working with BetterHelp, because if you're thinking of giving therapy a try, BetterHelp is a great option. It's convenient, flexible, affordable, and entirely online. That is the key point. All you do is fill out a brief questionnaire to get matched with a licensed therapist, and you can switch therapists at any time for no additional charge if you feel like it. If you want to live a more empowered life, therapy can absolutely get you there. Visit betterhelp.com/words today, and you get 10% off your first month. Please use the code, and that way you can sign up with BetterHelp and live a more empowered life. That's betterhelp.com/words. Try therapy. What was the, I guess, the family trade, as it were? What did your mom and dad do for work, and was there any expectation of you kind of entering those fields?
Oh, my dad, he's an electrician, and my mom, she does. It's accounting. I don't remember exactly.
No pressure.
Yeah, it's something to do with that. I could think of it, but it's not important.
Sure.
My dad, he went to school to be a gym teacher, and then he couldn't find work, and then he went into being an electrician to like provide for us and make money, because it was really tough finding a job in that area as a gym teacher. But like sport, like there's another, like it's pointing, sports was his thing, but he chose to become an electrician, which was like way easier to make money, and even though the work sucks, but that's what he did.
Got it. And was there any, like, was he showing you how to rewire stuff, and was there ever any interest there from that?
I worked with him for like 15 years. So he started bringing me to work with him when I was like 5. I would put like the little plates, and he'd buy me a CD on the way home.
Nice.
So that's how I got my music. I always worked with him. I worked with him my whole life, and he paid me pretty well too. Like, he paid me because I really wanted to learn. I really liked it, and I helped him. So he paid me pretty well. Like, not like he would like a full helper, but
right.
Eventually,
sure.
Eventually I was a full helper when I got out of college and I couldn't like figure out what the hell was going on,
Mm-hmm.
And I ended up going back and working for him again.
Yeah. Well, and I mean, the reason I kind of drill into that is because I think that electrical interest in regards to like working with your hands, and that definitely not only can help from a sort of electrical guitar perspective, but just that interest in whatever video games and programming and all that stuff kind of flows in together, where you could see the through line as far as the interest is concerned.
Oh, absolutely. It's kind of weird how like the dots connect, like when like in my life, when you kind of lay them all out, because right now I'm a broadcast engineer. Like, that's my profession.
Mm-hmm.
And like I've worked on 2 Olympics. I've done like a lot of NHL and NBA and WWE and like all this other stuff. And it's all signal flow, and it's either power or it's video or audio, so it's the stuff that I learned with him. When I'm dealing with like 200, 400 amp services going to broadcast trucks, like, I know not to kill myself, and I know like how these power supplies work and how to solder and like all this stuff that I learned from him. So it was like all really useful, even if it were like, it's, he's working on residential stuff, but it's all in theory the same,
Right. The core principles are there, and essentially that's exactly what you're doing, with your art as well. You're connecting one thing and then broadcasting it to another thing. Yeah.
And maybe that, not physically, but yeah, you're right.
Totally. And so, like you said, music was always a really big component of your parents' life, and clearly that love boiled over to you. Where did the, I guess, introduction of a more, your music, for lack of a better term, the more independent-minded stuff that wasn't either presented by your parents or you heard on the radio, how did you start to, I guess, discover that? So
my dad, he was pretty into, so he loved WBCN at the time, like in the 90s. And it was a big Boston rock station. And he was just into Alice in Chains, and he was into Stone Temple Pilots and Collective Soul and like all that grunge stuff at the time. And then I was into it. I liked it all. He had the Green Day out, like he had Dookie, he had it all. And he loved all the old stuff from like the 70s and 80s. So I was like kind of keeping up with the rock stuff. But the point of no return was he bought Reload because The Unforgiven was on the radio. Like Unforgiven 2 or whatever, or Memory Remains, one of those songs. And I was like, this is sick. This is heavy. Like, what is this? Because like Crocodile Rock was the heaviest song I had ever heard before that. Or like maybe some Alice in Chains. But yeah, so I heard that. And then on the way home from one of our work, days, we went to Newbury Comics, which is a record store in the Boston area. And I went to the Metallica section and I picked out Ride the Lightning. I was like, I want this one. This is what I want today. And I had no fucking idea what I was getting into. I wasn't ready for it, because Fight Fire with Fire comes in and it's the fastest thing I've ever heard. And I couldn't even comprehend it. I was like, these aren't even notes. Like, what is happening? And it like changed everything from then out. And then I started seeking out more of that.
I love that idea, especially when you're talking about something that you're not ready for. Like you're really
not even close.
Yeah. It's like you try to wrap your head around it, and you're like, there's something that attracts me to this, but I can't, my child brain can't process it or articulate it, but there's something that keeps me returning to it.
There's a few, like, so that was one of them. The Locust was one of them, and Dillinger's Calculating Infinity. Those 3 records I bought, and I was like, what is this? I remember going to FYE when they let you like scan things, and listen to previews for like almost 2 or 3 weeks. Every time like I went to that store, I would scan the Calculating Infinity thing, and I was just like, do I want this? What the fuck is this? And I kept going, and I never, like, it took a few times, but I was like, what am I listening to? I never heard anything like it. So that was such a huge moment, that Metallica. Metallica.
Where like the heavy music started to infiltrate, and I love stacking all of those up together, like Locust, Calculating the Infinity, because all of those things, especially as you're developing your musical language, you are always looking for something, a little bit more extreme or pushing the boundaries, because you don't know what your like limits are. And when it does tickle your brain and you're like, actually, you know what? Yes, I would like this played faster and like the most off time thing possible, please.
Yeah, it was, and I kept like finding new things that were just pushing my limits. And that was a huge jump, by the way, between that Metallica record and Calculating Infinity. But I bought Ride the Lightning so it was 98. So the Calculating Infinity was 2001, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
Yeah, because I got Miss Machine the day it came out. I went and I made sure I was there. But it was, Go ahead.
And how, no, it's okay. I was just going to say, and how were you sharing this with your, your friends as far as like discovering more bands that were along that line? Or were you just kind of doing, like you were talking about, going to FYE and just, sampling music like that and, maybe downloading an MP3 for, off LimeWire for 7 hours or whatever?
Yeah, it was a little of both, because so Casey and I were always like, we were matched up for a long time. And then, so we would both find things and give it to each other. And then we would shove it down our friends' throats. We were never cool. Well, let me take that back. I was never cool. Casey was cool. There was a time in high school where we both kind of split apart. And that was like maybe like junior year, and then a couple of years into our college years, where we didn't really talk anymore. He went to a different group of friends. He was really into like, I'm just going to name some bands, like Cursive and Chiodos and like that type of stuff. Like he really liked that stuff. And I never really got into it that much. The emo, I got more into that later, which is kind of funny. It was like, I was too cool for it at the time.
Yeah. Right.
And there's a lot of it that I actually went back to and I enjoyed later on. But I was really into Dillinger. I was really into like Unearth and like even like the early Hatebreed stuff I really loved. Like Perseverance was like a really big turning point for me. And Comeback Kid, and like I liked metal,
Sure.
Not a lot of the emo stuff. I like metalcore, and Dillinger was like my favorite band, and Between the Buried and Me, like that. So we sort of we took 2 divergent paths in our life there, and then we rekindled that later.
Yeah. Well, yeah. And especially once you start to see the through line in these bands that, yes, even though they're playing widely different styles of music, they all come from the, small sweaty rooms and have just done slightly different things, and that you end up in the same sweaty rooms.
Yeah. At some point. I forgot one like huge thing. Both Casey and I are huge punk fans, like enormous, like SoCal, Fat Records, like all of that, like that era punk stuff. Sure. Both of us are just so into that. Pulley, NoFX, Lagwagon, Teenage Bottle Rocket, like all that stuff. So we've both been like, that is our, that's the line that we both hold perfectly together. And then he goes the other way to like Against Me, and then goes into that Cursive stuff, and kind of goes more into the rock, and he really likes what is it? Like what is it? Tiger? No. See, I
Tiger
don't even
Shroff?
know.
Sure.
Yes. Yeah.
Yes.
He likes
Yeah.
them, and he likes like some of that stuff. And then I go into like Florida death metal. You know,
Right,
so he's not really into Deicide and Morbid Angel and stuff like that. So
Right.
that's sort of where we, you know, those are our separate lands that we're both happy. You know, I don't want to listen to that.
Right. Yeah. You both occupy, you know, individual spaces, but then you can bring it together to be like, oh yes, of course we both like Strung Out. So that's the
Exactly.
Right.
Exactly.
And so your trajectory, like you mentioned, you went to UMass for recording and stuff like that, and you were trying to figure out what, you know, how that could apply to, you know, figuring out a career and stuff like that. And I'm going to guess, like, especially from your earlier bands, there was no idea that you would, you know, play music full time from a, you know, touring band perspective. So what kind of was it the idea that you wanted to, you know, record and figure out the sort of technical aspects of documenting music? Is that was kind of the idea in going to UMass?
Kind of. It was more of the odds of me being in a band and like making any sort of living was very low. And I understood this. So I wanted to put myself in a place where if I couldn't do that, at least I could make a living doing something within music, you know? So I thought going to school for sound recording, like that would be a good way of, you know, putting myself in a position where I'll have like technical skills where I can make money in some way, you know, and still learn to play an instrument and get better at my craft and do all that stuff. So that was the little bit of foresight that I had at the time worked out pretty well, you know? So
Sure. And your first the first band that you were playing together with Casey, was that like in high school or was that in college? When did that come together?
We've been in bands. So our first band we made was like in middle school, and then that one stayed around till high school, and then we both sort of split up, and then we started talking to each other again, like in 2000, 8 or 9, and then we were sending stuff back and forth, and he was living in Seattle, and we were sending ideas back and forth for like this like new band, and he was moving back soon, and we were getting all excited about it, and I was playing drums and he was playing guitar, and we made that band Hetfield and Hetfield, which we brought into college. Like that was our college band, and it was fucking so fun. It was like Dillinger, Coheed, Fall of Troy, everything that we loved. You know, it was very similar to Astronoid in terms of like just everything we loved, we shoved into one like little band, you know?
Sure.
And Astronoid is actually the result of that from the other end of things. It's just, we put all of this chaos into Hetfield and Hetfield, and we were playing, like we were getting wasted. We were playing these like basements in college, and people were going crazy, and they were like throwing vegetables on the ground and like onions and shit, and it was awful, but it was so fun. And Astronoid was like the opposite of that, of like, all right, I want to make something a little more focused, something more simple, something more melodic oriented rather than technical. Like how fast can we play? Like, because that's what Hetfield and Hetfield was. How fast can we play? And it was awesome, you know. But I can't do that anymore, so I'm happy it's over.
Right. Well, and there is that weird scratch that you itch when you're younger to be like, you know, how offensive can I be? Like you know, like not necessarily you're like trying to bum people out, but there's an element of that where it's just like, dude, you're not going to get how fast we're playing or whatever.
That's exactly what we were thinking. Like not like offensive in that way, but how musically offensive can we be? You know,
totally.
It's just, and not to the point of like we weren't. It was sort of lightning bolt like, but not like that. It wasn't as like dirty, and you know how he like shoves the fucking mic in his mouth. We didn't do that. We weren't that far. But like lightning bolt was huge at the time, and same with the Russian Circles. And what's the band with the dude from? Oh man, Zach Hill's the drummer.
I don't know. Well, Daughters. There
No,
was,
it
yeah,
was like it starts with an H, and I'm not gonna remember it. Anyways,
it's
there
okay.
Zach Hill's band was really cool then,
Got it.
and so it was like stuff like that was popular, and like I said, Fallatroy, Number 12, Dillinger, Coheed. So like we threw it all in a pile, and that was it, and we had a great time. And Dan played bass in that. That's where we met Dan. We met him in college.
Oh, this after a quick Google, yeah, Hella.
Hella. There you go.
Yep. You're right. Yeah, but yeah, it is interesting that particular scene traveled adjacent to a lot of other bands, like you talked about Lightning Bolt, and that whole sort of, art school really pushing the envelope. Arab on Radar, like you said, Locust, all of that stuff was in this interesting milieu of like we are, we're not metal, we're not soloing, but we are really technically proficient, and it's so hard to, especially with what you're talking about, where just like, hey, we want to like contain all of this stuff within one band. And I'm sure people looked at you like you had a third head, where it's just like, what are you guys doing? This doesn't make any sense together at all.
Yeah, but it was exactly that. But like they loved it. Like
right.
in college, we would say we were playing a show at tomorrow night, and the place would be full. Like it was awesome, and it was we were just a fun band, and we didn't give a fuck, but we absolutely did at the same time, Like
it's really cool.
We were a bunch of art school losers that were just
right, figured out.
Drink an entire thing of Guinness before we play. Like there was one show we played at an art gallery, and we drank a whole case of Guinness before we went on. Like, and then I think we just played Green Day and Blink-182 covers, like really bad. Yeah, it was great. Oh, it's great.
Yeah, exactly what people signed up for.
Oh yeah. I'm sure they loved it.
Totally. Something that I was going to talk about a little bit later, but I think is there is not one piece of press about Astronoid pretty much since the beginning that doesn't make mention of the fact that you are creating quote unquote happy music. And people are so, baffled. And that's like a real entry point for people to be like, yeah, it's like metal, but it's happy. And, which is cool. It's cool that people notice that, but I do find it, I guess, interesting, the idea that you can't combine these two disparate things, like you were talking about originally, where it's just like, if you listen to Mew and listen to Astronoid, like you can clearly see what you are, doing. The inspiration comes from. I guess, is it kind of funny for you to hear that reflected back to you, where it's just like, Brett, why is your music so happy? Like, how does that make you feel?
I think it's funny because a lot of the time I feel like it's horribly depressing. It's just, and not horribly depressing. I'm being a little over dramatic, but it's like a lot of the stuff I'm singing about are like it's just my neuroses on like recorded. Like you're hearing me just like everything I sing about and all my lyrics and like all of the music is just like stuff I need to get out. And I write music in a way, I think, that like sounds hopeful and sounds euphoric and sounds like really, just like it's happy, but like I am a happy guy. Like it's Astronoid, I think, is like a perfect representation of like what you see is what you get. It's like, I don't think anyone's going to come up to me and be like, wow, I can't believe he writes that. I think it's
right.
I wear my heart on my sleeve with this band. It's like, this is it, and it's a direct reflection of me. So, but like, yeah, I'm an anxious, nervous wreck, but I'm in a good mood and I can deal with it and I'm happy,
Right.
I'm all good.
Sure. Yeah. I do think that, I think that's cool of you to express it that way, because I think that there is this real understanding of what people are projecting in their art, that it has to either completely match their emotions, not only to a T, but that's like who they are. They're calcified, where it's like, oh yes, because Brett plays this, metal mixed with melody. It's like, yeah, you're happy all the time, right? It's like, no, that's not true at all.
And yeah, and well, a lot of the times people are misinterpreting the lyrics too, and which is fine. I'm not telling them how to interpret my songs and anything like that, but it's mainly the naysayers are like, oh, this is a breakup song. It's like, dude, you have problems if you think this is a breakup song. Like, maybe you should look at yourself, because what you're reading in this is a breakup song, and the lyrics are pretty vague. So, maybe you should take a look inward on this one. So, but I like that. I like that about music, and I like that about lyrics. And when I read lyrics, I don't want it spelled out for me of like how I should feel listening to it. So I try to do that with my lyrics of like, I think on the new record, I kind of have things a little more spelled out, but it's just sort of the circumstances of which they were written, they were like that. But I like that. I like when people like can interpret, meaning from lyrics. So yeah, right. I get some shit for that sometimes, but I don't care. And I didn't stop.
BetMGM, an authorized gaming partner of the NBA, welcomes basketball fans with a slam dunk offer. Simply place a $10 moneyline wager on any game. If either team hits a three-pointer, you'll automatically receive $200 in bonus bets. Just use bonus code JERSEY200 when you place your bet. Enjoy this NBA season like never before with a variety of parlay selection features, player props, and the best daily promotions in the business. Download the app or go to BetMGM.com and use bonus code JERSEY200 to win $200 in bonus bets if either team hits a three-pointer in the game you wager on. Visit BetMGM.com for terms and conditions. Must be 21 years of age or older to wager. New Jersey only. New customer offer. All promotions are subject to qualification and eligibility requirements. First online real money wager only. Rewards issued as non-withdrawable bonus bets. Bonus bets expire 7 days from issuance. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER.
Do you feel rich? Do you feel Friday night rich? Every Friday night, you can get a grilled steak and a fresh lobster tail for just $24.99. Kick off your weekend in style. Only at TGI Fridays.
Something I also wanted to pick your brain on was the idea of, being technical for technical's sake. And a lot of the music that we've been talking about clearly it fits that to a T. And then there's also that idea of, a lot of bands that are in the sort of, progressive metal category kind of get made fun of because it's just like, whatever robotic music that's just like, oh, look at me. I'm playing guitar really cool and I'm putting all these crazy time signatures on it. I'm sure that there is a thought process that you go through in regards to, I can't remove the emotion that I am feeling in order to just like be technical. How do you, I guess, kind of think about music in those terms, or does anything I'm saying resonate with you from that perspective?
Yeah, it's kind of, I have like, all right, for example, like I'll try to write something technical and usually it gets put on the chopping block. Like as soon as I try to do something, it seems I fail.
Sure.
It's not until I just sort of let go and just sort of let whatever's happening happen, that's when I kind of get the good stuff. And that was a pretty big problem over the past few years writing for this album. There was just a lot of stuff I was trying to do and expectations that I thought I had to meet. And, I feel like I said the exact same thing for the last record, but I'll probably say the same thing after every album. But I feel like that I just said fuck it on this one, and I like this time I really didn't care rather than Astronoid, like self-titled. So yeah, it's tough sometimes to let go of that, because sometimes I had a couple of tracks that were like pretty cool and really technical, but then you're like, you try to put vocals over it and you're like, what the fuck am I going to do here? Like, am I going to rap over this? And that's like, a lot of these bands are instrumental for a reason, because like you want to listen to the music, and Astronoid's a very vocal centric band, and it needs to be kind of at the forefront.
Right. Yeah. And I do think that people can initially be attracted to Astronoid for, one thing or the other, whether it's, the music or the vocals being so prominent, but, being able to actually have an emotional output without just sounding like a bunch of robots doing robotic things. Like that's where I think the line can sometimes be blurred, because people either, people that are creating the art either focus on one or the other and don't try to blend the two. I mean, that's a hard thing to blend, but it's something that should at least put some conscious thought into it.
Yeah. It kind of warms my heart that we're still considered like a progressive metal band, because you could easily just sweep our like music under the rug, and just focus on melody, but I think we have some pretty cool stuff happening in the background. And, we're all, I won't speak for myself, but everyone else in the band are amazing players. And, if anything, I think they're underrated because of the band itself,
Sure. So once you started to tour more actively, with Astronoid, because I mean, I know that you obviously played, regional shows with your previous bands and stuff like that. But once you started to experience, quote unquote, life on the road, how was your relationship with it? Because not only were you getting out front as a front person singing and playing guitar and stuff like that. Was it difficult for you to make that transition? Was it easy and fun? Where did you kind of land there?
It was difficult and fun.
That's a good, I like that.
It was, I love being on the road, and I hate it. It is a lot, I love playing every night. I love being with the guys. I love the challenge of like what you need to do and to take, like, I love the setup. I love planning everything. It's as much as I hate it at the same time. So it's a very love-hate relationship, which I'm sure most musicians will agree. But the very first tours we were doing, I had a really hard time singing every night. And I am a drummer first, and then a guitar player, and then a vocalist. So
right.
I was not a vocalist on purpose. It was like this band started in my dorm room doing like writing 2 songs for Dan's school project. Like that's what the songs were written for, I had one song already done for fun, and I wrote this other one, like, and that ended up being November. So now that this sort of like snowballed into this circumstance where I'm singing like on tour, like I did not expect, and it was tough to like figure out my routine, and I still feel like I don't really fully have it down, even like it's been 5 years or however long it's been. So it's been tough. And like we were sleeping in the van, and we were like not getting any hotels, and it was like 6 or 7 of us sleeping in the van, and it was a lot, and it sucked. But it was amazing that we got to play with some of the bands we were playing and doing what we did. And like within the first few years, like playing with our favorite bands of all time, like Between the Buried and Me and Ghost, and like it was incredible. So I can't,
right. It was a lot, right? It was a lot to take in.
Yeah, and this is what we had to do it. So we did it,
Yep. No, that makes sense. And I know kind of part of that process, and I'm not trying to pick at Scabs from a business perspective. I know that, when you guys started to work with, your initial record label, I know that there was difficulties in navigating that because, when you signed, like you were just excited probably for someone to pay attention to you and like put out a record, and you're like, wow, this is weird. And then once it started to get more serious, then you had to kind of figure that out. Did you like the business of, kind of doing a band, or is that something that you prefer to keep kind of at arm's length? Not because you're disinterested, but just because that's not something that really interests you.
No, I'm fully invested in the business of the band. I'm talking to our man. Wayne. I'm talking to Wayne all the time, and I do all the bookkeeping and all of our finances. And I like to save money personally, and I like to save money in the band. So that crosses over. So if I'm in charge of, the band and our money and like where it goes and how we can save and do all this, like it's fun, and I hope that it makes it so that we can have returns faster. So ever since like it started snowballing, I took this really seriously, and we started the LLC right away, and I looked into taxes and how all that works. And so my wife and I are like overly cautious sometimes, and this is self-admitted. We both know. And then like sometimes it's almost worse that we're both around each other, because it'll just perpetual snowball, and we need someone to be like, that's enough.
Right.
Just like mixing the record, Dan needs to be like, Brett, it's done. And I'm like, okay.
Right. Yeah.
But I need to fix this one last thing.
Totally. Yeah. Move on. But no, I can't.
Yeah.
Right.
So I do like the business aspect of things, and some people don't, and that's fine. And they have, kind of trusted me with it, and I do a lot of it, and the guys help me out when they can. But I just kind of I ask them for help when I need it, and they help me, so it's good.
Right. Yeah. No, that's cool, because it does. I mean, everybody needs to fill a role in a band, and like when you got too many cooks in the kitchen, like everybody cares about the business and no one cares about the music, or whatever. It's like things fall apart pretty quickly.
Yep.
The two last things I want to hit on. One of them being, perfectionism, kind of like what you're talking about. You can sit there, because I know just from anecdotal stories that I know about you as a human, of just like, the idea that you can get, and again, this is not shots at you specifically, but just like you can get really wrapped up in a project and never be able to like actually get it released or see the forest from the trees, whatever saying you want. How have you kind of trained yourself to let go a little bit of that, to understand that, you need to hear their voices and they need to bring you out of, whatever rabbit hole you're in? Or is that just like a constant refrain that you have to keep in your own brain? How does that, I guess, all transpire with you?
Well, with Astronoid, it's nice to have Wayne, because he keeps me, on track.
Sure.
He gives me deadlines, and I work well with deadlines. And I am, I'm an engineer, and I'm a drummer, and I like time, and I like things to be neat, and I like structure. It helps me, even though I won't impose it on myself a lot of times. So Wayne is really he helps me out with that, with the band, and he gives me like, all right, we got to get the record out by X. We need these songs done by Y. Whatever. But with my own stuff, like I've had this project sitting done pretty much in my folder here for like a couple of years. And there's another project I did with Dan that like is sitting in the folder waiting for bass. Just like with other stuff, like Astronoid is my first priority, and like that, it's what it is. So everything else falls on the wayside. But I did manage to get something out last year, which was the Catan album with the guy from Vatnet, which I was very happy with. And we got that out, and that came out on Prosthetic, and I was very happy with it. So, and that was a completely different offshoot, like really fun thing where he wrote all of music. I like basically just produced it, did the engineering, and wrote drums. Like it was awesome. I didn't really have to do, the heavy lifting of writing, and it was refreshing. But yeah, it's tough to like, whenever, like, I think I said this earlier, but like when I try to do something, I can't do it. Like if I sit and try to write an Astronoid song, like it's not going to happen. Like I just need to just sit and just want to write and have it flow. So
yeah, see what comes out.
Yeah, it's tough for me to focus, and especially with, well, maybe not tough for me to focus. It's tough for me to release it and be done with it. And with this last record, it just kind of came together really quickly at the end. I kind of struck a chord, and I was like, this is what I've been looking for. And then over a course of like 2 months, the record was written. So it was done. And I sent it to everybody, and they were like, yes, this is it. And then we just re-recorded it. Like it was very, very easy, to do it all this time. And I do my demos are like, they're very flushed out. So it was literally just doing it for real and then being done with it. And I am very going back to the perfectionist thing, like this is the part, like there's not a lot of
Right, there's not
leeway
a
sometimes.
Yeah.
No, like I like Dan gets the most leeway because he, like, I'm not a bass player. I understand what I don't know. Like, like what you said earlier. I'm not a bass player. I
Yep.
can't write keyboards. So Dan does that. I'm a drummer first. So Matt's fucked. It's right out of the gate, Matt's fucked, because the drums and the guitars and the melodies are like intertwined from the get-go. Like those are my babies. So when I bring Matt into this, I'm like, dude, this is it,
Yep.
And he can like sneak some things past the goalie, but besides that, oh, that was a pretty nice little hockey pun there.
I know.
Yeah,
You can see.
Yeah.
It's very, very apropos.
Yes. So I feel bad sometimes, but he does wonderfully with it. And he did a couple fills on this last record that are just like absolutely bonkers. And he has also some really great ideas that come through. So, everyone sort of has their thing. And also, I can't play a guitar nearly as well as Casey. So he takes the solos, and I think he crushed it on this record. So, yeah. I don't know. I just kind of went off there.
No, it's okay. Well, I mean, you're articulating the places that where it's like, oh yeah, like I can, the reins can be loosened here in a positive way.
Yes, and Matt and I are working on that because he is an extremely creative drummer, and he was he was like on the initial VatNet, like the EP, like he did so much of that, and he's such a creative player. So it's, I understand where there can be frustration with working with me, and I am not the easiest to work with sometimes. I understand that. So right. I try to keep that in consideration when I'm, when we're working on these records and stuff like that.
Sure. We can all agree you're the worst. We'll just put that out there. Okay, cool.
Yes.
I'm only kidding. And I did say two last things a minute ago, but I promise these are the two last things. When you started to, really be involved in the band, the music industry side of things, and were pursuing that, more heavily from a touring experience, how were your parents kind of reacting to a less than practical, life decision of pursuing the band? And, were they like, Brett, like, I mean, okay, I guess he could tour, but like, that doesn't, it's not going to pay the bills or whatever. How are they reacting to your pursuit of that?
Yeah. So they never really said anything.
Okay.
They never gave me any pushback. But I knew that they were reluctant of what I was doing because I was in New York and I was working for the Mets home show, and I was making good money, and I had just moved there with my wife, who was my girlfriend at the time. And then Air came out in June, and then I gave my notice in July because of how many managers and booking agents and press the record was getting. And my wife was like, you need to do this and just see it through. And I quit my job. We moved into her parents' basement, and we lived there for a year. And then I started figuring out all the touring that we were about to do. She was starting to do some freelance work. And then we built our life basically from there. And I built up a freelance broadcasting little business that I do. And then now she does a bunch of really cool stuff, and the same thing. She's also in the broadcast engineering and just engineering in general. So I think my parents just sort of saw where it was going in terms of he'll make it work, because they never specifically said anything, but
right.
Yeah, it was a really bad decision in terms of, what you should do. You shouldn't leave your really well-paying job, in New York City and just move into a basement in New Hampshire and
tour
in your tiny little band that nobody knows.
Sure,
So,
sure. I really like when people are able to rally around the idea like, okay, I know I'll be able to cobble together a living by doing these, 4 or 5 things that, could equal to a quote unquote real life salary or whatever. But at the core of it, I want to keep focusing on the band because it not only does it feel like it has
hello?
momentum, but can you hear me? Hello?
Hello?
Hey,
I
can you hear
lost
me?
there.
Oh, okay. No, I was just saying that.
Can you hear me?
Yes, can you hear me? Hello, hello, hello,
Hello?
hello. Am I back? Hello?
Yes. Yes, you
Okay.
are.
All right, sorry.
No, it's okay.
Yeah, I was just saying that I think it was interesting that you were basically just building your life around the band and then, supplementing it with all of the other things that you could do. But at the core of it, it was just like, I need to be free to be able to pursue the band. That's the most important thing.
Yeah, everyone had to do it. And it was, it was a choice we all had to make at that time. And unfortunately, at that time, Matt couldn't do it. So he was not in the band for a while. It actually worked out for him kind of because when the second record came out, he was back. But those first, I think, 3 years, he was not touring with us because he couldn't stop working. Like the way
Right.
that his life was happening, he couldn't leave his job and afford to do what we were doing. And we were like, dude, do what you need to do. We'll get someone to fill in. And we had Seamus from VetNet fill in, and he did an amazing job during that time. But, Matt, a few years later, was able to come back and like he was, our original drummer. And, Seamus did a great job, but that's what the door was open for Matt. And when he was able to do it, he came back in, So it was really tough. And everyone since has come up with this solution of doing it. Like we all have jobs now that we can sort of come and go, and it was really hard. It was like up until 2 years ago, we figured it out, so it took a while to build, but we did it.
Sure. Right. Yeah. Because you were, like you said, just kind of focused on trying to make this work. However, you were able to, slice and dice it. It's like, let's focus on this, guys.
Yeah. And, we had partners, those of us who had girlfriends or significant others, they had to be on board too, and that's a big part of it. Matt was married and Dan was, I think he got married right around when Self-Titled came out, and I got married to 2020. So, we all were in it, like in relationships too. And that was a whole thing too, of they needed to be involved. And luckily my wife is the most supportive person in the world and just wants this to, she wants me to do this just as much as I do. And it would, be very upsetting if I had to give it up, because she really sees the value in music that I do. And especially, what, like my music and what I'm trying to do.
The last thing I want to hit on was, the fact that you have built your life around this band and you're putting all these pieces together in order to make the band work. Is it like what still keeps you, I guess, connected to this, artistic pursuit? Because obviously as people get older, there are so many different, responsibilities that come in and all of the other quote unquote real life pressures. But what keeps you wanting to be creative and kind of keep this at the center?
That's a really good question. Because a lot of it is just misery.
No, totally.
I don't know. I love creating. Like I just love doing it. And I feel like until I no longer have anything to say, I'll keep doing it. I love pushing myself and I love getting better at my instrument. And, it's a release for me. And I consume so much music all the time. I'm always listening. And I just always have that need to, I guess, kind of, in a horrible word, regurgitate, what I take in. And because you talked about the meat grinder earlier, but that's sort of what happens is like I take all this stuff in and I'm like, I gain inspiration and I just need to do it myself. And, I think that the machine of the band also helps keeping me going at this point because we have the manager and we have touring and we have all this stuff. But over the lockdown, that wasn't the case. It's like we needed to get a record done, but like nothing was happening. So, but I kept doing it. So it's a very good question of like why I keep doing it, but I just love it. And it's kind of like the one constant through my whole life of like, I've always written music, and I've always played, and it's sort of the connecting tissue to everything. I couldn't imagine stopping. And I've talked about it like with my wife many times of just like, if Astronoid were to be over, like it would be really cool of like what we've done, and I'd be really happy with it. But I would move on to something new. Like I'd move on to something else, and I have plans for other things now, and if they'll ever come out, who knows? As we talked about earlier, but I have all these grandiose ideas in my head of like what I want to do and what I want to try. So, but luckily Astronoid is like this empty canvas of like whatever I want, so like with the new record, like I just sort of did whatever I wanted. And I think it is our best album in terms of, the mix of Air and Self-Titled and the aggression and that beauty and all that. So as long as I get to keep doing whatever I want to do and no one's really telling me what Astronoid needs to be, then like I will continue to do it. And if not, I'll just go do something else. Like it will never end.
Right. It's just, it's that evolution of like, well, on to the next thing, because I do think that there is that, that value of what you're talking about of being able to be creative and put something out there that you don't know, how other people will react to. And that there's always that exciting element of just like, well, here it goes. Like, let's see what people think about it. If they think it sucks, then okay, I message received, but I'm still going to be doing what I deem valuable,
Yeah. It's not even like I'd love to see what other people have to say, but it's mainly just getting it out. And I love to do it. It's like, even if it just went into a vacuum, like I'm glad, like even the things that I have sitting in my bot, like on my hard drive, I love it and I'm happy I did it, and if it never comes out, then whatever, but I like listening to it sometimes, Right. Like I think it's pretty cool. So
yeah,
I write music I like, it's usually what happens is when I'm working on an album and when I'm writing, like I'll listen to it like constantly, and then as soon as it comes out, I'll never listen to it again. It's very odd. Like the amount of times I've listened to Air and Self-Titled once they come out are just like, almost non-existent. But up until the date of release, like I listen to it probably every day, just like being like, is it okay? Almost, like, is it okay to put out? Like, is there a click or a pop anywhere that I missed? Or, is the guitar solo too loud? Or, and that goes into, Dan and I's mixing and recording of everything ourselves. Like, it'd be nice to just hand it off to somebody else, but we like doing it. And I think it's a part of our identity at this point.
Sure. Yeah. It's a part of your process where it's like, if you relinquish, you can relinquish elements of it, and you can have maybe someone, like obviously do mixing and all that stuff, but putting together everything else, you're like, no, this is the way that we like to do it.
Yeah. There's a little magic there. Like we're lucky we're able to do it ourselves. From the business perspective, we save a lot of money, and I don't think we lose any quality doing it ourselves. That's one of the benefits of going to school for sound recording.
Yeah, absolutely.
We invested in the band without knowing it.
Totally. Cashing in those skills for real life applications, your dumb band.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. There's I think it'll come out someday, but there's some really strange stuff that we have done together that I would like to put out. So
that's fun. That's fun. Well, someday. Exactly.
Yep.
Well, Brett, thank you so much for hanging out. I really appreciate you letting me ping pong around your brain. But excited to share this to the world. So thanks for coming on, man.
No, thank you.
Thank you very much for spending the time with me and Brett talking about his band and just, life in general. So thank you also to his publicist, Monica, for bringing the idea to my attention and, making this all work. So next week, I have Gibby Miller from Dias Records, and he also played in Panic and The Trouble. He is a very foundational piece in a lot of the independent music scene. I mean, the Dias as a record label has been existing for 15 plus years. Really documents some interesting music from across the spectrum, whether it's like, new wave, dark wave, that sort of stuff, really experimental bands. And I love what he does. And I loved Panic when they were around. I never got the chance to see them, but I was able to pick his brain about that, about social networks, because he started Makeout Club. For those of you that existed in the 90s and early 2000s, Makeout Club was just like, it predated social media. It was wild. So anyways, that's what I got next week. And until then, please be safe, everybody.
You know what it's like to endlessly seek a remedy. Are you ready for a prescription that's once daily, steroid-free?
VTAMA Tapinarof Cream 1% is a prescription topical treatment for adults with plaque psoriasis. Do not use if you're allergic to VTAMA Cream. The most common side effects of VTAMA Cream include red raised bumps around the hair pores, pain or swelling in the nose and throat, skin rash or irritation, including itching and redness, peeling, burning or stinging, headache, itching, and flu. Tell your doctor about all the medicines you take, and if you are pregnant or plan to be, ask your doctor if VTAMA Cream is right for you. You deserve more from your topical. To learn more, visit topicaluprising.com.
Your favorite podcast, Therapy for Black Girls, is celebrating 5 years of empowering conversations as we continue to make mental health and wellness accessible. In addition to weekly chats with some of your favorite mental health professionals and other experts, we've flipped through the pages of your favorite romance novels with author Tia Williams, checked in with Grammy Award-winning artist Michelle Williams, and talked hurdles in sports, motherhood, and mental health with Olympic athlete Natasha Hastings. From our team to your podcast app, join us in celebrating 5 years of the Therapy for Black Girls podcast. Check it out on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
Welcome to Crash Course, a podcast about business, political, and social disruption, and what we can learn from it. I'm Tim O'Brien. Every week on Crash Course, I'm going to bring listeners directly into the arenas where epic upheavals occur, and I'm going to explore the lessons we can learn when creativity and ambition collide with competition and power. Listen to Crash Course every Tuesday on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.